Another thing I'd like to change is that all of the text inside of my columns is right up against the edge of the element. So I'd like to add some padding into here so that new items, music, and clothing have a nice amount of space around them. So here I'll go to this section selector and I'll go ahead and set the padding to 20 pixels. Now you can see as soon as I add the padding, it's definitely spacing that text out from the edge of the element. However, now we've upset the width of each of these columns and they no longer add up to 100%. In fact, you can see clothing has no room to fit here. And remember, when you're floating elements, they'll only exist on the same line when there's room for them to do so. So here, new items fits, music fits, but then clothing has nowhere to fit, so it just wraps below. This is because here we have the width set to 33.3%, which adds up to 99.999% if we include all three of the columns. But then, since we're using the W3C box model in this browser, we also have to add on the 20 pixels of padding, which is adding on almost another 6% for each of these columns. So we have a few choices. We could subtract from the width here in order to compensate for the extra width of the padding, or we could set the box sizing to border box. So I'm going to go ahead and go down here and use the universal selector, which is the star symbol, to select all elements. And I'm going to tell all elements to have a box dash sizing set to border box, meaning that I'm going to adopt the IE box model, which includes border and padding into the width. And then I won't have to worry about this additional 20 pixels of padding in the sections. Now, I'm going to go ahead and also add the prefixes for older versions of Safari here, and also older versions of Firefox by adding the -WebKit and the -MOZ prefixes. And this will give us better cross-browser support for box sizing. So I'll go ahead and click Run, and you can see now the 33.3% of the width of these elements is including the padding. So it all fits here into the 100% width of this wrapper div. Cool. So let's say that I also wanted to add some margin around these elements. So I'm going to go to the sections, and we're also going to set the margin to 1%. The same issue occurs that occurred before, is that we've now added on to the width of the elements. And unfortunately, neither the IE box model or the W3C box model includes margin into the width. So here, because I've set the margin to 1%, I have to add on 1% on each side for all three of these columns, which is adding on another 6% of space. Now what I can do though is I can subtract 2% from each of these columns in order to make up for the 1% of space that's being taken up on each side. So here I can just go ahead and set the new column to 31.333%, music to 31.333%, and clothing to 31.333%. So by subtracting 2 from all of the widths of these margins, it still adds up to 100% inside of the wrapper div.